All right. I'm glad you tuned in today. We're in the middle of or just started last week, a series on the last days. And I took my jumping off text from Matthew chapter 24. And Jesus said that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall also be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So if we want to know from Jesus' perspective what it's going to be like in the last days, he gave us a monster hint. He says, you go back and you look and see what it was like in the days of Noah. Those things that took place and the way that things were then, that's how it's going to be at the tail end when I get ready to come back. So last week we jumped back to Genesis chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6 in there, and then chapters 9 and 10. And that gives us the overall picture of what was happening in Noah's day. Same thing's going to happen, is it in the process of happening right now. So we briefly broke down this whole scenario into 6 segments. And last week we didn't get to any of the 6. We just got a basic foundational background here. But the 6 areas of breakdown are simply spiritual decline, of which we can see that today. That doesn't take a mental genius to figure that one out. Social dilemma. These are things that were taking place in Noah's day. Spiritual decline, social dilemma, same things that are happening today. Shameless depravity. In Noah's day, it rose to the level of actually having sex with fallen angels / demons. It doesn't get much worse than that. Scientific development. We're in the same boat today. Technology, they say, it doubles every 2 years or so. So whatever we can do with smartphones, with tablets, with the computer, with the internet, with all this stuff, all this knowledge, all this information that we have in 2021, by the time we get to 2023, it will have doubled. It's just exponentially going off the chart, the things that we can do. It's amazing. They were in the same boat. They were discovering, metallurgy, music, art, science, all these things that we have today. They invented, time as such. They figured out, how many seconds to the minute, how many minutes to the hour, how many minutes to the day, all these scientific things that they did. It's all happening again today. Strong delusion. When it came to spiritual matters, they were just dumb as hammers. Pretty much like us today, just dumb as hammers. And then the last one, sudden destruction. They were warned and warned and warned and warned about the impending coming doom. Went in one ear and out the other. Today, people are warned and warned and warned and warned of impending coming doom. In one ear and out the other. It's like Ecclesiastes says, there's nothing new under the sun. The way that we were then, same as we are now. The value system that we had then, same as we have now. Human nature, same as it was then, same it is now. There's nothing new under the sun. Well, let's take the first of these, and that is spiritual decline. Starts out, 2 people in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. They blow it. God boots them out of the garden. Life goes on. Adam's going to live around 950 years or so. They start a family. Those kids grow up. They have other kids. Those kids grow up. They have other kids. By the time Cain goes off to, leaves his mom and dad or so, at that point, there could have been tens of thousands of people on the earth. So Cain marries one of his sisters, and life goes on. There is a population explosion going on. So God was quickly forgotten, though. After they got booted out of the garden and their kids came along, God was still, at least with Cain and Abel, he was still in the picture. We even have incident where Cain is actually speaking with God after he kills his brother, Abel. God is still communicating with mankind. He's still involved with mankind. But mankind is on the way mentally and spiritually and emotionally ready to walk out the door. Cain actually gets in God's face, if you can imagine. He kills Abel, his brother. God comes down. He's going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's going to give him a chance to at least explain or justify why he killed his brother. And so he says, "Where's your brother?" Knowing that Cain had already killed him, left him in the field or buried him or something. And Cain comes back, instead of saying, "Gee whiz, I don't know," as such, or "Shucks, you haven't seen him around lately," or some other thing. No, how would I know? Am I my brother's keeper? He gets in God's face. There is no fear of God with him. There is no sense of awe or wonder. He's just in his face. So already you can see a spiritual decline in mankind. After Adam and Eve blew it, there's nothing more said of them. They get kicked out of the garden. They begin to have their family, and then that's it. No more mention of them. So time goes on, generation after generation after generation. As I said, by now, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on this earth. We've come to a guy by the name of Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10. Flick over there. Genesis chapter 10. Nimrod, he was fairly sharp, this guy. He wasn't a doofus, and he wasn't a dummy. But spiritually, he was just as dead as he can get. He was a rebel against God. He did his own thing. He pushed his own agenda. And just overall, he was not a very good guy as such. Genesis chapter 10, look at verse 8. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. In other words, this guy stood out. He had it together. Whether it was charisma, whether it be physical strength, whether it be proximity to, power source, whatever it happened to be, this guy had it going pretty good. Verse 9, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, that doesn't mean he was hunting before God was hunting. That's not what that expression means. And there's no period after he was a mighty hunter. if there was a period right there, then the emphasis would have been on the fact this guy was a mighty hunter. But the Holy Spirit includes that little phrase, before the Lord. And again, before doesn't mean time-wise before the Lord. It just means in front of the Lord, in the Lord's face. Again, you can see there's a trait with this family of getting in God's face. A mighty hunter, he began to supply the needs of the people. He began to be the source of provision or security or knowledge or whatever it happened to be. He was against God. God says he's going to take care of your food. Who needs God? I'll take care of you. I'll provide for you. I'll be the figurehead. I'll be the one that you can look to for guidance. I'll be the one that you can look to for security. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, against God, in God's face, if you please. Oh, Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And he built a city. The name of that city happened to be Babel, or Babel, however you want to pronounce it. B-A-B-E-L. The little L at the end, Babel, L was one of the names of God. So by this time, God was still in the human consciousness, as it were, but it had been denigrated now to just a peripheral type thing. Yeah, we worship God, but we're just going to come to church on Christmas and Easter. Yeah, we acknowledge God, but we'll put him on our money. In God we trust, but then that'll be about the end of it. In other words, they were giving lip service to God. Any difference than what we're going through today? That's 90% of Christianity. It's lip service. So he builds a city, Babel, and we know what becomes of Babel. Babel would eventually be renamed into Babylon. So you can see the spiritual decline already in the human race. After Adam and Eve blew it, it's just a downward spiral. They are just circling the drain, as it were. And this guy comes along and he just accelerates it and he exacerbates it. The emphasis in these days, if you read these chapters, Genesis chapter 4 and 5, chapter 6, 7, and 8 is about the flood. And then we jump back into human history again with 9 and 10. If you study those chapters, you'll see that the emphasis is on man. The emphasis is not on God. At this point, as I said, we're just giving lip service to God. Everything was about man, his comfort, his security, his power, his pleasure, just everything had to do with man. In our age today, everybody's got a TV or access to a TV. Out of every 30 minutes of TV time, at least 10 minutes is taken up with nothing but commercials. So if you watch a 30-minute show, 10 minutes of it is going to be commercials. The rest of it will be, the show. If you want to see human nature in all of its glory, in all of its wonder, if you want to see what the focus of mankind today is, if you want a snapshot into the heart of man, the mind of man, just look at a commercial. Everything is obsessed with us. We've got a skin cream that's going to make you look 20 years younger. Oh, we've got a pill that's going to rejuvenate your bedtime pleasure. We've got this tonic here that will make you feel like this. We've got this exercise machine that's going to make you look like that. Everything is geared to us, to our vanity, our looks, our performance. Oh, here's a brand new car. Now you can be better than the doofus down the street who has a 3-year-old car. Aren't you something? You need a second house. You need a bigger house. You need a more wonderful house. Doesn't matter that all your kids are gone and it's just you and your wife rattling around and they're empty. You need that big status symbol. What's the purpose of the commercial? The purpose of the commercial is get you to buy something, to take your money and give it to them. And in return, they'll give you something that they think you want. It's amazing. One of my favorite commercials, and I say this with tongue in cheek, are the ones that have to do with credit ratings. Everybody's got every adult has a credit rating. If you've ever signed up for anything or paid time payments on something, a mortgage, a car, it makes no difference. You have a credit rating. Now, we see commercials on the TV all the time. Well, if you sign up with us, you can increase your credit rating by 15 points instantaneously. And now that'll enable you to get that loan, to buy that car, to get that mortgage, whatever it happens to be. Because your credit rating has gone up. Call them, sign up for whatever they're selling, and your credit rating is going to go up. The phrase in that commercial that's amazing to me is, you need to get the credit that you deserve. And I thought, first time I heard that, I thought that something doesn't sound right there. The credit that I deserve. I've got lousy credit rating, let's say, and I make a phone call to these guys and I sign up for whatever they're selling. I give them money. And all of a sudden now my credit rating is up. Your credit rating is your credit rating. If you're chronically late on payments, if you make partial payments, if you don't make any payments, if you skip them or something, you have a credit rating. That is your credit rating. What is this? The credit that you deserve. Where's the deserve part come in? You've got the credit that you deserve. If you make all your payments on time, in full, or maybe even add a little bit extra to it, your credit rating is going to reflect that. You'll have the credit that you deserve. If you're chronically late, partial payments, missed payments, and so forth, you have the credit rating that you deserve. So this idea, this concept of I can live my life how I want, I can handle my finances the way I feel like it, that I'm going to put myself first. Instead of making that payment, I'd rather go down to the bar and spend, $80 on drinks or something. Or if I can't afford a mortgage payment because I went on a cruise last month, hey, you've got the credit rating that you deserve. Nobody deserves a better credit rating. You earn it. If you got 5 people running a race, they don't all deserve to win. The one who's the fastest gets there, or the one who's the strongest is the one who deserves it. This whole culture that we've grown up in now, everybody gets a participation trophy. That's stupid. Everybody gets recognition because they tried. That's stupid. That's not reality. And so the kids are growing up with a false sense of reality. And as soon as, all the way through school, They get lousy grades. They get pushed forward because you got another whole train of kids coming up behind you, and they don't have any seats for them, and the teachers are overwhelmed. So they're not going to keep you back 1 or 2 years because you flubbed up and you were lazy and you were just too stupid to try. So they push you forward. Well, I got promoted. Yeah, I'm in middle school now, or I'm in high school now. Yay, look at me. I deserve that. Same thing with credit. Same thing with trophies. Well, I ran the race. I came in 15th, but hey, I should get a trophy too. I deserve this. No, you don't deserve it. The guy who wins deserves it. And so we grow up with this mentality that the world owes us a living. And then we get out on our own, and reality hits us, slaps us upside the face. And all of a sudden, life isn't the way we thought it was. People are not going to give you a trophy in the real world for trying. So human nature never changes. This is what these people back then in Noah's day were experiencing and going through. Same thing that we're going through today. Another aspect of this time and age was that there was very, very few people who had the ability to set the narrative worldwide. Now, I said that there was probably, by the time, the Tower of Babel and all that stuff was done, when the flood came and so forth, there were literally millions of people, if not more. There could have been billions of people on the earth. If you do the math exponentially, you take 2 people and they're going to live over 900 years. And they're giving, theoretically, the woman is giving birth, every year, year and a half, 2 years. And one of the things that God said about childbearing was you're going to have it multiplied. So these girls, these women, they're cranking out twins and triplets and quadruplets hand over fist here. And so that first generation, you've got 10, 15 kids in a 10, 15-year period, let's say. Well, 30 years later, those 10 kids are all going to be at childbearing age. And so now they start, 30 years go by, and that next group, which is now 2, 3, 4 times what the original group was, they're all starting to multiply. And now 30 years later, you go another great big bunch, and it exponentially, not just 2, 4, 6, 8. Now it's 2, 8, 12, 18, 30. They're exponentially multiplying. Adam and Eve lived 950 some years or so. How many kids did they crank out in that time? And every 30 years, a whole new batch starts to reproduce. There could have been billions of people on the earth at that time. Geographically, I'm not sure. The Bible doesn't say how they were spread out. How many lived in North or South America, if any? We don't know. How many lived in Australia or the Polynesians or Hawaii or Alaska? We're not sure. The Bible focuses on the Mideast, that area around Israel, the Mediterranean, and so forth. That's where God focuses. And so, time goes on, population multiplied, the world was in spiritual decline. Two guys surface. Cain, the original Cain, of the let's kill my brother Cain, and another guy named Lamech. These two set the narrative. for religious and social thought. Lamech comes along, and up to now, everybody just had one wife. One man, one lady, one couple. That was it. Lamech comes along, and one wife isn't good enough for him. He needs a trophy wife, along with his regular wife. So he marries another one. So now he's got two wives. So he's sending a message, and this has to do with sex. So the narrative is, I am going to set my rules. I'm going to set my recommendations as such. I'm going to make a pronouncement on how the family life should be structured. Sex is a monster biggie. Next to self-preservation is probably the strongest instinct that we have. I mean, we all want to be rich. We all want to be powerful. We all want to be influential. We all want to be liked. This is human nature. But when you get right down to it, there is two drives that are head and shoulders above everything. One is the urge to reproduce, have sex, and the other is self-preservation. When you feel that your life is imminently in danger and that adrenaline rush comes through, you will do anything to save yourself, whether it be run, fight, kill, it doesn't make any difference. Every human being at that moment of no return is going to do everything in their power to maintain life. It's the strongest urge that we have. Second one is multiply and replenish the earth. God gave that command to Adam. He gave that command to Noah, and he gave that command to Abraham. He hardwired us into that. So a guy like Lamech comes along, and now he's going to restructure the whole thing. He's going to set the narrative. He's going to set the tone as to how the family should be structured. And once you've done that, now sex is on the table. If it's okay for me to have, sex with my wife, hey, why not with another second wife? And if that's good to go, why not with somebody else, a casual acquaintance? And so it goes, and it just trickles downhill. Cain, the narrative that he focused on was social justice. God came to him, told him he knew what he had done, gave him a punishment. And Cain's response was, oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I repent. Forgive me. No. After God gave him the judgment, Cain's words were, my punishment is greater than I can bear. In other words, number one, God, you are unfair. You are imposing a punishment on me that I can't handle, that I can't take. I definitely don't want, and I don't need. So once again, he's in God's face. My punishment is greater than I can bear. Can you see any similarities with that attitude, with that mindset, and what's going on today? Gee whiz, I don't know. Let's see. Things don't go my way. Maybe I can riot. Oh, maybe I can burn cars. Maybe I can break into stores and take everything in sight that's not nailed down. Gee whiz. We've really progressed, haven't we, as a society? Human nature is just getting better and better and better, isn't it? Let's see. I get nailed by the cops. I get thrown into a car. police car. I get sent to jail. I get photographed. I get fingerprinted. I get thrown in a cell until somebody can bail me out. I don't have any money to get bailed out. Gee whiz. It's not my fault. And so what do the bleeding heart liberals do today? Oh, let's have a no bail policy. You commit a crime. You're accused of a crime. You haven't gone to trial yet. You have been officially designated or convicted as a criminal. But we want to make sure that you come back to court so that we can have the trial and settle it one way or another. But oh, no. We can't have any bail. You can arrest them, but then you have to let them go. My punishment is greater than I can bear. Oh, let's legalize pot. Let's legalize heroin. Let's legalize all this stuff. Why? Because we can't confront with the problems that it bears. We can't have all these poor people deprived of what they want to do. Or we can't fight the war on drugs. We've lost that one. So what do? We decriminalize everything. So one day, I'll never forget, a few years ago, we had an election. On that same stupid election, we're talking about state propositions here. On the very same day, we legalized marijuana and we outlawed plastic bags. You know, when you go to the grocery store, they used to be in the old days, you know, do you want paper or plastic? Well, most people wanted plastic because they were easy to, get rid of. They had little handles and so forth. And then, of course, the environmental wackos get into the thing. Yeah, we got all the, the plastic in the oceans. We got this and that. And the plastic lasts 10,000 years and so on and so forth. You know the drill. And so a proposition comes up. And the proposition is, hey, we're going to outlaw plastic bags. So we do. We outlawed plastic bags. And in the same stupid election, we legalized marijuana. My head just wants to explode on this stuff. It's incredible. We've really progressed as a society, haven't we? We're really getting better and better, aren't we? Oh, we're getting so much more religious and holy and spiritual and so forth. Yeah, we really have our act together. It's incredible. The spiritual decline is it's exponential here. Back in those days, there were very, very few men of godly influence. There was Seth, there was Enoch, there was a few other guys, but for the most part, they didn't command the narrative. It's just like it is now. We've had our Billy Grahams. I don't even know who's comparable today in a Billy Graham type level. But we've got our mega churches all over the place. I mean, we've got churches of 3, 4, 5,000 people, auditorium, 3, 4, 5 services a Sunday. I mean, we've got some big mega churches. We've got TV programs. They're on 700 stations and so forth. These guys in one Sunday, they'll reach more people than the Apostle Paul reached in his whole lifetime. And they can do it in one day. So we've got all kinds of access to this stuff. But there doesn't seem to be any power in it. The church seems to be ineffective in its ability to stop this moral rot that we're going through. Just exactly like it was in Noah's day. Noah preached 120 years. God said that he was a preacher of righteousness, a preacher of righteousness. And he sat there and he built this ark in a 120-year period. Every single day, people walking past that thing, looking at the construction and the progress of the construction, knowing that at the end of that time, there was going to be a destruction come. There was going to be doom coming. They couldn't care less. Whatever Noah was doing, it did not filter down to the population and stuff. And how do I know this? Simple, because only 8 people got on that ark. Just 8. Wasn't thousands, wasn't hundreds, wasn't millions, 8 people. Poor old Noah, I've always felt sorry for him. He preached 120 years. He had his immediate family, his 3 boys, their 3 wives, and his wife. That's it. 120 years of preaching. He gets 8 people. So we got very few godly men today that are making an influence. The church is not making an influence on stopping the war on crime or drugs or pornography, or just, go right down the list. We're losing the battle left and right. This age was also marked with a increase in absolute total demonology. To the extent, I'm not talking, the tarot cards, the tea leaf reading, the seances, and that, 99% of that is hocus pocus anyway. But there is a kernel of truth in it. There are some people who are tied in and hooked up with the world of demons and fallen angels. There are some people who have a pipeline into demonology. I think I'd mentioned one time, I was at lunch. I was just sitting in the car, playing around, looking things up on my phone. And I was curious as to is there any comparable Baal worship going on in the world today? Because Baal was the primary demon, the primary god of the Old Testament, for the bad guys. Baal worship, Israel fought that for their entire history. And I keep hearing every now and then that there is a resurgence in the worship of Baal. I thought, well, this is stupid. How can a 2,000 year old thing make a comeback in this day and age of so-called sophistication, technology, knowledge, smarts, and so forth? How can we fall for that? And so I looked up modern day Baal worship, and sure enough, I just kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling of all the incidences where the resurgence of the worship of Baal is going on. It's incredible. And today, 2021. But these guys back then, they took the cake. Because it wasn't just sitting around in a little circle holding hands and singing kumbaya type stuff. With them, it was an active interrelationship with fallen angels, demons, if you please. You remember one of the analogies that Jesus gave in Matthew 24? He said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, where they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. We think, big deal, marrying and giving in marriage. We do that all the time. These guys, they took it to a different level. The women were marrying these fallen angels. And the dads were giving them away to them, marrying the women and giving in marriage the men. The whole society was corrupt. You got a young maiden, a young girl on the verge of getting married, and you're the dad, I guess, and you know, you're looking up and down the street and you're looking through the village and so forth. Well, what are the candidates that my little girl here has for finding a husband? And you got, you know, the idiot doofus down the street. He's about the only kid, you know, age appropriate and so forth that she's got to choose from. And then one day, some guy strides down the middle of the road and he is different. He is an angel. Looks like us, smells like us, feels like us, touches and so forth like us. But he's an angel. So now you as a dad think, if I can get my girl hooked up with him, boy, what a status symbol that'll be for me. And if you're the girl and you've got a choice of, you know, doofus down the road or an angel, which one are you going to jump for? These guys were in it up to their eyeballs, demonology, in the classic sense of the word. So that little throwaway phrase that Jesus gave, marrying and giving in marriage, that's not such a throwaway phrase after all. There is meat to that thing. There is depth to that thing. The women couldn't wait to marry them. The dads couldn't wait to give them in marriage. Well, today we've got, you know, witchcraft is on the rise, Wicca, the occult, Baal worship. I mean, the whole thing. There's nothing different. There's nothing changed. I don't know if you've ever been to a Christian bookstore. And this, to me, is telling because I've been a book lover all my life. And I remember, 30 years ago. Now, for some of you, that's your whole lifetime. For me, that's less than half my life. So 30 years in my world is not that long of a deal. But I can remember 30 years ago, right here in Orange County, there were literally dozens of Christian bookstores. You didn't have to drive 50 miles. You didn't have to drive 25 miles. Within a 10-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now, there were dozens of Bible bookstores. I'm not talking Barnes Noble type bookstore, Bible bookstores that all they did was sell religious stuff, Bible type stuff. Dozens and dozens and dozens of them. Now, I can put on one hand. And you know where I have to go? I have to go clean out the Riverside or up to Long Beach. But if you do find a Bible bookstore today, go in and look at the books. And I venture to say, and these are just approximate, I haven't done any scientific research in it, but just familiarity with the books, the type of books and so forth, the multiplicity of, you know, bookstores that I've been in, the number of years that I've been doing this. There are certain patterns that emerge. Today, if you go into your average bookstore, at least 30% of the books sold in that Christian Bible bookstore are going to be novels. That's it. Novels about love, about, you know, Christian novels, Christian love stories, and so forth. Nothing to do with Christianity. Nothing to do with the Bible, nothing to do with anything religious at all. It's just Christian love stories, Christian novels. Now, they've always had them. But in the old days, you would have a section, you know, maybe this big of Christian novels within a bookstore of this big. Now, you've got this much, just Christian novels. The other big prominent section of books is self-help books. How do I get along with my wife? How do I get along with my kids? How do I get along with my boss? How do I get a blah, blah, blah? All this self-help stuff. another 30%. So now we're in a Bible bookstore, and going out the gate, 60% of the books in there, you can just throw it in the garbage can. They've got nothing to do with God, nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with the Bible. Then you've got another section, and this is the sharing and coping section, and that's at least 20%. 12 steps to a greater prayer life, 15 steps to a more effective this, that, or the other thing. 3 steps to get closer to God. I mean, all of this gobbledygook, which again is just somebody's opinion. It's not Bible-based as such. So between the Christian novels, the self-help things, and the coping and the sharing, and the getting along, and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, you've got approximately 85% of the books taken up with that. You might have, for the rest of the thing, the other 15, 20, 25%, you might have some good autobiographies or biographies. You might have some commentaries. You might have some explanation books, what this means, what that means, and so forth. You might have some Bible atlases. You might have some history of the church, history of Christianity, history of, different religions and so forth. But in the overall scheme of things, in the old days, a Bible bookstore would be this big, and this much of it would be good stuff. Now, Bible bookstore, you've got this much, which is good stuff. The rest of it's just junk, absolutely junk. And so the church is starving. And so one bookstore after another bookstore after another bookstore closes. Why? Because they can't find a Christian novel someplace? No, there's thousands of them in there. Because they can't find Christian self-help books? No, they're coming out the wazoo. Because they can't find books on how to cope and how to get along and pull your stuff by your bootstraps? No, they're coming out your ears in there. But there is something that they can't do. They can't fill that spiritual need inside. They are not hooked up to the Holy Spirit. They are not biblical. And so you, for whatever reason that you can't understand and you can't put a finger on, you just don't find any satisfaction in them. They can't help you. And so when you have a spiritual need, you have given up going to a so-called Christian bookstore to find help. And so they just close one after another. And as I said, 30 years ago, there was 20, 25 of them around here. Now, if you can find 2, 3, 4, 5, you're extremely lucky. Timothy said, 1 Timothy chapter 4, remember the premise that we started with. As it was in the days of the Son of Man, so shall it be, or as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Paul says, 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1, now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times, that's us, as it was in the days of Noah, so also shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. That's us. Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith and give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. We're right smack dab back in the middle of the days of Noah in 2021. All right, next time, we'll go ahead and we'll just keep plowing through this stuff. I had originally figured that it would take maybe two lessons here. It's going to be longer than that. So if you want to bail, go ahead and bail. If you want to stick around, it's going to get interesting before we're done. I guarantee. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, I don't even know how to pray on some of this stuff. It's coming down like a freight train. We are circling the drain. I think we are past the point of no return. I don't see anybody on the horizon from a spiritual standpoint that can stem this tide. I don't see the pulpits filled with preachers or enough of them to do much good at this point. I think we're just basically in a hold on status. And when you yourself said that in the latter times, some shall depart from the faith and give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, it cannot get any more dire straits than that. The so-called church itself is falling apart here, just as it was in Noah's day. And so, Father, I pray for those Christians who are born again, who are saved, who are looking forward to your coming again, who have put their faith and trust in you, who have been born again. Because just as in Noah's day, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. Madness, depravity, debauchery, sinfulness has just completely overtaken our society. And unfortunately, for a lot of Christians, the only way to cope with that is the old go along and get along type mode. We don't want to stand out like sore thumbs. We don't want to be singled out as oddballs. We want to be considered for promotion. We want to be considered to be picked for the team. We do want to be considered for all these things that the world offers. We don't want to stand apart. We don't want to be oddballs. And so we go along to get along. Hence, it's just one little step from that to departing from the faith and giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Oh, Lord, help us, please. Help us with our backbone. Help us with our integrity. Help us with the clarity of thought that we need. Help us with our faith. Help us to withstand the fiery darts of the wicked one. Because he's getting more brazen, he's getting more outright, he's getting more open. Christianity is under assault. And there doesn't seem to be anybody standing up to stem the tide. So God, forgive us for our laxity, forgive us for our laziness, forgive us for our fear, forgive us for our ignorance, forgive us for our apathy, forgive us for the fact that we just don't want any trouble. We just want to go along and be one of the guys. God, forgive us. Bless your people, Lord. Bless your people in Jesus' name. All right, next time, we're going to look at the social dilemma. Today, we looked at the spiritual decline. Next time, we're going to concentrate on the social dilemma. And trust me, that is a monster biggie. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.